Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to NEWSROOM. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 12th of September 2022. A new week begins. Nevertheless, a lot of stories to discuss with you. And of course, we'll begin as we do with the latest as far as the flood situation is concerned. The United Nations Secretary General was here in Pakistan on a 2-day official visit. He visited the different areas and he also inspected the devastation that was caused all across Pakistan. This is what he had to say, that this was unimaginable. He has seen the devastation. He has also said that he will appeal to all of the countries across the world to help Pakistan as much as possible. Also, the government has launched a digital flood dashboard today to ensure transparency in the flood relief assistance and its distribution system. This was launched by the Minister Hassan Iqbal Saab. And of course, it's going to be very important because in the whole wake of different parties or different organizations saying that things are not transparent as far as the donations are concerned, this is going to be a very important step in that direction because everything will be available, everything will be there and transparent. Whosoever wants to access this can now access it. Also, there are humanitarian flights that are coming from different countries, whether it be Turkey, whether it be the UAE, whether it be the United States of America. All the countries are trying to help in their capacity as they must, but we need more help than that because of, as you can see in the parallel window, the devastation that has been caused across Pakistan. This is going to be our first segment, the devastation called the relief and rescue operations that are going on by our governments, by our armed forces, by our local NGOs, and of course the demand and the need to have more aid coming Pakistan's way. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the Indian maritime doctrine as far as the seas are concerned. India has tried to try its level best to maintain some kind of hegemony in the seas as well. But of course, all the attempts by India have been thwarted. And Pakistan is quite vigilant as far as the Indian incursions are concerned. We know also time and again there are Indian incursions into Pakistani waters, and those attempts have also been successfully thwarted by the Pakistani side. What does India want as far as the control over waters is concerned? This is going to be our second story of the day. Then we are going to talk about the 57th Martyrdom anniversary of Major Raja Aziz Bhatti Shaheed Saab, Nishan-e-Haider. This is being observed today. A ceremony was also held today to pay homage to Major Aziz Bhatti Shaheed Sahab. He was born in Hong Kong in 1928, moved to Pakistan before independence in 1947, and of course is known for his bravery and his valor, for which he laid down his life and became a martyr and was of course awarded the Nishan-e-Haider. And finally, we are going to talk about today where Pakistan is observing a day of national mourning in the death of Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom. She passed away recently, and of course now there is a new king in the United Kingdom, King Charles III. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif accorded this approval that was requested by the Foreign Office to observe a day of mourning today. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns the floods, the aftermath, devastation, and the relief and rescue operations that are going on. Of course, also the visit of the United Nations Secretary General that happened, and the pledges that he has made that he will try his level best to ask different countries across the world to help Pakistan as much as possible. More in the following report.
Pakistan is grappling with the harrowing natural disaster as floods from record monsoon rains and glacial melt in the mountainous north have affected 33 million people and killed almost 1,400, washing away homes, roads, railways, livestock and crops in damages estimated at $30 billion. Floodwaters flowing from Manchar Lake continue to wreak havoc in Dadu districts of Sindh, and more villages are facing a threat of inundation. Civil military institutions are conducting massive relief and rehabilitation operations across the flood-hit areas of the country. On the directive of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, Government of Pakistan is launching a digital flood dashboard to ensure transparency in flood relief assistance and its distribution system. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres paid a 2-day visit to Pakistan to express solidarity with the country braving a colossal climate-induced natural disaster. UN Secretary General has called for a substantial in financing to developing countries for adaptation resilience to counter the negative effects of climate change. The world has a responsibility to massively support Pakistan as it is the human tragedy of an enormous dimension, and Pakistan's contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions is negligible, but it's facing deadliest consequences of the changes caused by those emissions.
Hamza Ameer, who's a renowned analyst, joins us online. Hamza, thank you very much to have joined us. Hamza, the devastation, the number of casualties, the number of injured, the damage caused is increasing with every passing day. Is the world recognizing it? Is the world cognizant of this damage? Is the world going to do something about it as the damage is extensive and Pakistan needs as much of help as possible?
Well, firstly, thank you very much, Omar, for having me. I think the world does recognize now that since the time the United Nations Secretary General actually did a solidarity visit, and he visited himself, and his words were very clear. He has not seen this kind of a widespread of devastation ever before in his life. It shows what Pakistan is going through. It shows what Pakistan is suffering from. And at the same time, the human capacity for the Pakistani government or even the Pakistani people at large is not up to the mark when it comes to catering up to over 33 million people directly affected, living in the open sky on ground levels. Many of them still say that they have not been catered to with relief and rehabilitation, or at least even rescue.
There are so many areas that are far-flung, that there are so many areas that are not easy to reach, and therefore there are a lot of people who have not yet been given the necessary relief that needed to be provided to them.
Well, I agree. I think in the world that was probably not very well aware of what the capacity or what the intensity of this whole flood in Pakistan is, are now very well aware. And that is why the inflow of aids have started to come through, even though they are not enough, even though they're not even close to what we received back in 2010. Yet they are pouring in, and which is heartening to see. Pakistan's government has made this very clear that they need the international support, continued support, because right now we're in the rescue and relief operations. It is going to be rehabilitation soon. It is going to be reconstruction of infrastructure coming in the coming days, in the coming weeks for now. So that is going to be a really massive challenge for an economy like Pakistan or a government like Pakistan to handle. And the international support is pivotal, and that is exactly what the United Nations Secretary General reiterated repeatedly during his visit to Pakistan, that Pakistan needs help and assistance from those countries who have contributed much, much more to climate change and pollution and air pollution emissions. Pakistan only contributes 1%, yet it is actually
less than 1%, Hamza, less than 1%.
Yes, and still it is going through one of the worst possible climate change effects. And that is something that is very serious. Pakistan is in dire conditions, is in dire need of help, and the international community has to come forward even much more strongly than they are right now.
Hamza, we are already grappling through economic issues of our own, and then these floods happened because of climate change, which Pakistan is not contributing towards, as you very ably said. The Benazir Income Support Program has dispersed more or less 23 billion rupees to the flood affectees, and more is going to be dispersed. But this is not enough. The devastation so when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to crops, when it comes to lands, when it comes to people and their lives and their livelihoods, is going to be something that is going to take a long time. What needs to be done in your point of view, and what are the measures that are extremely important in this day?
Well, Omar, I think as per the global organizations are concerned, they have always kept 6 months as a time of relief and rescue operations. So at this time, even relief and rescue is the priority when it comes to the international donor countries that are pouring in with their relief aid at the moment. But as we speak, from where the waters have passed, for the people who have actually walked kilometers over kilometers to get to ground areas, they are now reporting various kind of diseases that they have. They are forced to drink because they were
contaminated water, unclean water, and that is what is giving rise to waterborne diseases like diarrhea. Like I mean, there's cholera. There's an outbreak of cholera in many of the areas. Then there is dengue, there is malaria, there are diseases that children are being infected with, and then women who are not being provided the necessary sanitation, and this is what is causing problems to them as well. Childbirth, so many women are about to give birth and have already given birth, so they need the birth kits as well at the spot. It's going to be a very, very difficult task for the government to do alone.
Exactly. It is going to be an absolutely daunting task, an uphill ride if the government only is left to itself to actually handle this whole catastrophe. This cannot be handled on their own, and the government is very rightly repeating itself over and over again. I remember the chief minister of the Sindh province saying that to the international media that if you want to come and criticize us, do criticize us, but at least come and show what is happening on ground, and that is very, very important. The government alone cannot do it. It is very clear. It has to have come with the support of the international community. And as I said, the United Nations Secretary General's visit, as it was a solidarity visit, but yet it holds great value for Pakistan, because for that reason, Pakistan has extended its plea. Its damages, its losses are estimated from $10 billion to $30 billion within in the span of weeks, and it is going to keep increasing. Even as we speak, Sindh is currently badly, badly affected. Balochistan is badly damaged and destroyed. It is going to take a daunting task for Pakistan government, and without the help of the international community, under the given circumstances of the country's economy as it stands right now, it is going to be almost impossible for the government to handle. And the international community will have to come forward. We're talking about 33 to 35 million people. It's not a small number. Lives, livelihoods, livestock, their houses destroyed, their crop fields destroyed. Even when they go back to their homes, they will need a lot of support to get resettled and rehabilitated. And that is, again, it's not a small process of 2 weeks or 3 weeks or even 6 months for that matter. It is going to take a long, long time.
And it's no direct fault of Pakistan or the Pakistani people who've been affected by all of these floods. And on one hand, I've also talked to a lot of my guests in the previous days as well. On the one hand, the floods are affecting Pakistan. 1/3 of Pakistan is underwater. On the other hand, Pakistan is also slated to be facing drought by the year 2025. So a lot of issues that Pakistan is going to be, facing because of climate change for no fault direct of its own. Antonio Guterres, he was here for 2 days. You talked about that as well. You talked about the pledge he made. Will that pledge be translated into action? Will the world listen to what he has to say?
Well, I think when it comes to humanitarian relief and even operations, United Nations does hold a good value in the international community, and his plea would be heard, as we hope at least it would be heard, because that is something that Pakistan is banking on primarily, almost, that they need the support of the international community. And I would expect the international community to come forward in a much stronger way. However, with what we have going on right here, people talk about transparency within the government itself, the capability, the credibility of the government. Even that is being sorted out. Every single data is going to be online for everyone to see where their funds and their money is going to, which holds, again, very, very important, pivotal importance for the Pakistani government and the Pakistani nation also, because whatever is being done is reaching out to the people. It's actually being sent ahead as a relief, as rescue, as healthcare facility to the flood affected people. Is something that is very important, and people need to know, the countries need to know. They actually can raise questions down the line on Pakistan's credibility. Now, with Pakistan doing this measure as well, then it is going to help Pakistan in a great way to convince the international community that whatever is being sent has a transparency in its support, in its distribution, and the people who are being reached, their numbers are available, rescue operations, their details are available online for everyone and anyone to see, for that matter. And I think that matters. That actually shows the government is not only working day in, day out for the relief and rescue operations to provide relief to the 33, 35 million people. It is also cognizant of the fact that it needs to create this transparency of trust, which is going to create
this
more
transparency of trust that you talk about, Hamza, is so important in this day and age, because not only is there external factors that are trying to raise a lot of questions about Pakistan's credibility when it comes to disbursement of funds, but also internally we've got parties and people who are trying to raise a lot of hue and cry as to Pakistan's proper disbursement of the funds due to these floods, and that are being provided to by different countries. And in this whole scenario, how important do you feel is this digital flood dashboard that has been launched today, otherwise also known as the executive portal of the NFRCC, that was launched today by Hassan Iqbal Sahab? How important is it for people to know on the spot on how much money is being given by the different countries and NGOs, and how much of that is being spent, and how, where and how, and in which mechanism?
Well, Omar, in view that many people abroad who are even overseas Pakistanis had their concerns when it came to sending money to the government's accounts and the relief fund installed or established for the flood relief, they would actually be able to see it for themselves and see that what is actually happening on ground on the government level, which will hold massive importance because it has to reflect into more funding and aid coming towards Pakistan from countries, from people abroad. And I tell you, even in Pakistan, no matter what the people might say, no matter what the social media may be buzzing about, I can tell you, and you would know yourself as well, heroics are being witnessed among people, among youngsters. Two young girls worried about, the female healthcare, and they're working day in day out. I know people who are working day in day out, collecting rations and funds and aids and tents and everything, and they're going to those places where other people still now might not have been able to reach. So that is something that Pakistan needs to highlight more. Unsung heroes, we have loads and thousands of them working in these days, day in day out, as I said, tirelessly. And I think that is something that has to also be to reflect in the government's effort, that while they are working, they are asking for support, the people of Pakistan are standing shoulder to shoulder in this dire time of need for its own people affected by the devastating floods.
Hamza, on one hand, we've got the direct effects in the form of destruction of livestock, of property, of crops, of lands, of buildings, of dams, of bridges and barrages. On the other hand, we've got indirect effects as well in the form of disease, in the form of the effect that these floods have had on the education system across Pakistan, on the effect that it has had on the economy of Pakistan. Do you feel it will take Pakistan a long time to come out of this current crisis that it is embroiled in because of the floods?
Well, I think it is going to be. It'll take a very long time because see, look around the area that has been affected by the floods. It is this widespread locality of people who are underprivileged, who are not were not living in those very comfortable circumstances, and they did not have a lot of money as well. And their only way of living was livestock and farmlands. Both are gone. Their houses are gone. So once even they go back as well, once they start going back to their homes, they would not have anything to see over there other than rubble of sand. And that is something that is going to hurt them. Once even they even settle down in their own homes, then their earning facilities are going to become a challenge for them. And that is something, and we're talking about like 33 million people. It's not a small number by any means. And that rehabilitating them, resettling them back into their own lives is going to take a long time. And I tell you, I was speaking to one person. He was scared that he wants to go back home, but next year monsoon rains will come again, and he was scared that what happens next. What if it comes again? Where do I take my family?
That is a very important point. What comes next? How important is it for Pakistan and its organizations and governments to prepare themselves for future calamities of the sort that they've encountered this year?
Well, I think again it's a very serious, but it's a long time gaining task that Pakistan needs to start taking this matter seriously, taking climate change seriously. I think we have been very ignorant towards this matter. While the rest of the world was working towards it, Pakistan was not doing enough when it comes to creating more scenarios of keeping itself away from such kind of a calamity. But now, because we've been hit with one, and it has broken all historical records, Pakistan now will have to actually join heads together and work on this. That what ways do they relocate the people from areas from where the floods are expected to cross, and obviously how many banks do we need to going forward, at least saving people's lives and their homes. Because if this happens again, Pakistan would be completely devastated. Already it is, but if it happens again, then what happens? This trauma, this fear that the families have gone through of 33 million people, children, young children who can't go back to school, who can't even go back to their homes. They're sitting right next to the main highways on ground level. They have no idea what's coming next in the next 24 hours. This kind of trauma, it will take a lot of time for them to get out of. And before
you talked of trauma, I think it's also a very valid and important point that needs to be highlighted. Not only is the physical trauma evident, but what is not evident is the psychological trauma, that a lot of these people, these women, these children who've lost their lands, their loved ones, and their livelihoods are going to be impacted within the months and the years to come. It's going to be very important for the government and the NGOs concerned to also, impart the necessary psychological help to all of those who've been affected, whether we like it or not, whether we consider psychological help a taboo or not. I think it's extremely important in the wake of this devastation that we take the necessary steps. What needs to be done as far as proper blueprint for the future of Pakistan is concerned, as far as climate change or climate change development or climate proof infrastructure development is concerned, in your point of view?
Well, I think so. When we have an example of the billion tree that was done, and I think that played a major part, or at least a very significant part, in saving many parts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. I think this is something that we need to look forward to in other parts of Pakistan as well, especially Balochistan and Sindh. We have to create more green land areas with trees that actually are going to help facilitate the air quality. And obviously, we need more dams. We need more pathways. We cannot keep on.
Don't we need more construction of barrages, of infrastructure that is climate proof? I mean, I understand you talk about the billion tree, but that is for environment. The floods, the floods when they happen, the devastation that they cause needs, necessitates the construction of all such structures that will be in areas prone to devastation, should be climate proof. Do you feel that is also a necessity?
It is in fact, it should be a mandatory thing that the government should be looking into, to create more barrages, to create more ways, rather than breaching into the ones that we already have, and because they might actually go over their own capacity. So we have to create more pathways of water flow, easy, comfortable water flow away from the livelihoods, away from the living areas in all across Pakistan, for that to actually go straight out without even damaging any possible claiming any possible human life, or even claiming any possible damages to infrastructure. And that is something that can be done. I think Pakistan government would have to sit together on these lines more sooner than later, because in parallel to what is happening right now, they are busy day in, day out, but yet this is something that will have to be worked on serious and priority basis.
All right, Hamza, do you also feel that countries that already have blueprints for, to tackle climate change, there are so many in the West that have prepared blueprints for the next 20 years or even more, should help Pakistan in the reconstruction of all the areas that have been impacted by the floods? And B, how much of aid do we also require in terms of, helping with the reconstruction of all of these areas, and helping the people stand back on their own 2 feet? I understand that the importance of money is paramount, but apart from that, don't you also feel that we need also manpower, we need also technical help and support, and material support in the form of proper construction materials, so that could be climate proof?
Well, I think yes. See, and as far as the damages are concerned, we already are at $30 billion in destruction and losses. And so that gives you an estimate of what exactly is the figure right now, and we have not even entered into rehabilitation. So going forward, we will have to work up a mechanism with countries, friendly countries and other countries, sent out an appeal for them to send their technical teams, assess the situation, make assessment reports, and then find out a way to provide homes and structure and even reconstruction. It probably might be the right time to do the right thing when it is in the reconstruction and rehabilitation phase, to make things not get worse in the near future. And I think that can be done. We saw that happening in 2005 when the earthquake happened. Many companies from abroad came and they provided people with makeshift cabins, kind of residences to stay in. I think this is something of this sort needs to be worked out with clarity on what needs to be done. Because again, Omar, we're talking about over 33 million people, and that is a huge number. Relocating them, resettling them, and providing them assurance that this is not going to happen again is something that is a massive channel, which Pakistan government alone cannot do. It needs international support in every possible way.
It needs international support in the form of monetary aid, but it also needs international support in the form of technical aid, in form of support from different organizations that are specializing in restructuring of areas that are prone to flooding, so that next year, I hope it doesn't happen next year, but we never know with climate change affecting Pakistan and how vulnerable Pakistan is, that it could happen next year or the year after that or 3 years from now. So we need to be ready for any such effect of climate change that we might be confronted with in the months and the years to come. And for that, the international body, the global body of all the countries that are ready to tackle climate change should be helping Pakistan one way or the other. We are, of course, receiving help from different countries. World Food Programme, Canada is helping, different other countries are helping, the US is helping, UAE, Turkey, and all our brotherly countries are helping, but we will be needing much more than that. Thank you very much, Hamza, to have joined us, to have talked to us about Pakistan's fight against climate change in the form of this devastation that has impacted Pakistan in all its provinces, Balochistan, Sindh, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Punjab, every province has been affected. And the road to recovery, the road to putting people back on their own 2 feet is going to be a very long and arduous task, and we really need to be on one page internally, and of course as far as our point of view externally is concerned, when it comes to Pakistan and how Pakistan needs to be strengthened. Our next segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the Indian Maritime Doctrine. What needs to be done in the whole shape of the way India is trying to manipulate directly or indirectly the waters, and we have seen incursion of India into Pakistani waters as well, that has been very tactically thwarted by the Pakistani side, and we've talked about that in the past as well. But what mechanism needs to be put into place by Pakistan and also by the regional bodies or international bodies in the whole wake of the geostrategic or geopolitical or economic scenario that is slowly and steadily developing in different directions? To talk about that and more, we've been joined by Dr. Farah. She's a foreign affairs expert and she's here in the studios with us. Dr. Farah, thank you very much to have joined us.
Thank you, Omar.
Farah, when it comes to this Indian Maritime Doctrine, the balance of power, the Indo-Pacific strategy of the US, and giving more power to India as far as its play in the region is concerned, do you feel Pakistan is ready as far as defending its waters is concerned?
A very big question to answer in simple words. Well, 21st century is usually and aptly called the century of the seas. And in this age, we are fighting from all fronts, and waters is one of the emerging issues for us. I'm not talking about the flood water and all of that, but the water of the oceans.
Of course.
In the geopolitics, we are seeing that it's the rivalry between United States and China, and they both are eyeing on the waters. Indian Ocean is also very important to the United States and both to China as well. Now, India is strategically placed in such a location. If you look at the global map, it provides access to all the waters. So it is very convenient for the US to support India, so they can counter China on one side and to achieve their larger objectives as well. I was studying the BRI project and its maritime access points. So in that, I noticed that there is, a bigger triangle, a larger one, which connects the what is it called, the Strait of Malacca, the Strait of Hormuz, and then the Suez Canal. Within that bigger triangle, what China through BRI is trying to do is creating a smaller triangle. So it will provide smaller maritime access to Europe and to Africa, and of course Asia as well. In this smaller triangle, China is trying to connect certain seaports. That is, it is trying to give access to the waters from the eastern side of China to the Hambantota port, and from the Hambantota they are trying to connect Djibouti and then of course Gwadar. So this is a smaller triangle within the bigger triangle. The smaller triangle is all about China, its influence in the region, which will provide easy access to all these powerful regions in the world. Now America and the West will never let it happen because they already have an established system which is going to be replicated by China, and of course the distance that we speak about, it is providing the shortest sea routes to all these connecting regions. So it is beneficial for all the connecting countries, but America will not let it happen.
Now, Mr. Jaishankar says that India will not be constrained between the Malacca Straits and the Gulf of Aden. How much do you believe in what he has to say, and do you feel that India is going to evolve a strategy in order to say exactly what he has said?
I think they cannot avoid it at one place. Because when we look at the Strait of Malacca, that is something very important to the Western countries. And as I mentioned, Indian strategic position provides an access to all these Western countries to pursue their agenda and their goals and their objectives. So whether India wants it or doesn't want it, it will fell into this, debate and discussion in the future. And we could see the role of India can become more and more strengthened in the future, because we can see China-Pakistan relationship, which the Western powers are not really happy about. So they will definitely look towards someone which that someone happens to be, I will not be afraid to say, is India. So they will move their entire strategies towards India to achieve their larger goals of empowering India within the region. One, India will achieve its larger objective of countering China in the region. Secondly, if India becomes a regional powerful country, which it is slowly and steadily becoming, so it will ultimately win the objectives of the Western power to have an influential power here in the region. So it's like a win-win situation for the Western powers.
But Farah, do you feel that Pakistan, with its neutral stance as far as establishing close relations both with China and the United States is concerned, can influence the US so that the rising hegemonic designs of India could be somehow neutralized?
I think so. The power of the nuclear capability is quite immense. But I think very often we forget about that we are a nuclear power state. And I think the attitude of a nuclear power is something different than whatever the attitude we are having in the global politics. We should not be apologetic all the time in the global politics. I'm not saying that we should have eye-to-eye contact with everyone. No, there is diplomatic means, there's diplomatic ways of doing stuff. So we should be focusing more on all those areas where we can improve on. Being a nuclear power country, I think we can utilize and maximize our resources to the maximum if we design proper strategy and mechanism. At the moment, I think we are really, pushing towards, by some forces, towards such a situation where they make us decide and do whatever they are aiming for to do in the region. And unfortunately, India is taking full advantage of what we are not capable and able to do it. They are taking advantage.
Therein comes China. Now, on the one hand, we've got India that is trying to expand its maritime presence. On the other hand, China is also going to contest the Indian Ocean maritime space with a growing naval might. Do you feel this is going to create some kind of confrontation between the two countries? Do you feel this might create more tensions in the region?
I think it is really a tough situation for both of them, where if we can see with the recent development that they have, the carrier that India has come up with, it is having more than 43 to 45,000 tons of capability to carry Vikrant. Yeah. So in comparison to that, whatever China is having, China is at the moment having 3 carriers and India is having 2 carriers. So the second carrier of China, that is carrying more than 70,000 tons of capability to carry vessels and everything. So they cannot compete China. They will try their level best to reach but to the level of China, but I think China will always be a step ahead of them, because 43,000 they have reached now and China is 70. By the next one they will reach another level. Now the point of concern to me as what's called an analyst in the foreign affairs is that India is taking advantage both from America and from Russia.
Of course.
And even they are open to businesses with China. So they are very shrewd, as I mentioned earlier.
And they are playing their game
exactly.
right.
In their favor, they are playing their cards very well. They know when, where and how to manipulate the international politics to achieve their objective. End of the day, what we can see is that in 2030, whatever it is presumed that there will be, like in terms of maritime power, there will be United States, UK, and then there will be China, Russia and India. They're going all to be there. So India is jumping on and it is passing on different levels very smoothly and very cleverly.
When you talk of India, jumping levels is also the whole aspect of nuclear-powered attack submarines that India is supposed to add to its fleet later this year or maybe a bit later. how is that going to also impact the balance of power in the region as far as the waters is concerned?
Well, they have always remained the favorite child of the Western powers when it comes to the use of and the misuse of various resources that involves here. If even they link that the nuclear capability to it, they should never forget that Pakistan is also a nuclear weapon state, and for a nuclear weapon, it only requires a button, to use the weapons and the missiles. We have seen in case of Ukraine, whatever they have done, they didn't have to station their carrier there; they just attacked, and it happened. So they should not forget that. Of course, when it comes to these carriers and all of that, it adds on to their power, their capability, and these kind of carriers are very important for diplomatic and for foreign relations, their relationship with one another in the region and all of that. But if they are looking up to threaten Pakistan, I think Pakistan, they should be aware of that they are a nuclear weapon state and they will respond back as soon as they are triggered.
The Indo-Pacific strategy by the US, then the creation of AUKUS, how is also that going to impact the waters in this region and the balance of power as far as controlling the waters is concerned?
Well, waters is AUKUS, we have to see why it was created in the first place. It was to weaken the Chinese BRI and the CPEC project and all of that. Initially, I was thinking that probably CPEC is something that is strictly confined to this part of the world and it is not having an impact to the other part of the world and other regions. No, it is connecting everything because this is a flagship project of the BRI. And the larger goal is to connect the whole world. And connecting the whole world means having access to all the resources of wherever they are. So China so far have access only to South China Sea and the Taiwan side and all of that. With having an access to this part of the world, Hambantota and Djibouti, which is very, very important, it will provide access to China to have access to the Indian Ocean and to the waters of this part of the world. So it will have access there, it will have access here as well, and there will be larger room to manipulate. But as I said, China has to take some drastic measures in terms of its policies and all of that. Otherwise, the West will never let it happen, whatever China is aiming at.
When you talk of drastic measures that China needs to take, what in your point of view are the immediate steps that China needs to take in order to maintain that balance of power as far as the waters are concerned?
Well, when you speak about the balance of power, there are certain contours of power that any powerful state who happens to be the world power, unipolar, multipolar or bipolar, they have to achieve different contours, and those contours include your military capability, economic capability, political maneuvering, international level, and your media information, and there are a couple of more as well. So in that capacity, China, and there is technical and administrative manipulation as well. In that aspect, China does not meet all of those, except for economic development and all of that. What China is doing so far till this date is it is having different economic projects at different regional countries, with different regional countries and at different levels. It does not aim to empower those population by, trying to have its strong foot there, which is, I think, the weak part of China. And why China is not able to do it, it is its non-intervention policy.
All right.
So when I say China needs to take some certain drastic measures to come forward, if it is really interested in trying to, not to become another powerful country in the world, but or to compete the United States, but to tell the world, I have this capability and I can do it. And this area, these waters, these resources, these regional geographical locations, they're very important and dear to me. So for that, China has to revisit its non-intervention policy, and it has to tell the world that, and why I'm saying it, because Hambantota and Djibouti are very important to China, and because of its non-intervention policy, they lost Sri Lanka almost. So all those small states who are having some sort of partnership and economic projects with China, they will be afraid of that. If the United States reach out to them and try to push them to the corner, China will never come out to help and support them.
There are a lot of questions that emanate as far as the waters are concerned, and both China and Pakistan need to be extremely careful as to the different adversaries that are present in the region. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news stories and segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Thank you very much, Dr. Farah, and we'll see you tomorrow inshallah. Allah Hafiz.